Hello, good evening, and welcome to In My Shoes, hosted by Ground Zero Ministries. Glad you guys can be here tonight. We're going to have an awesome panel. This panel tonight, by the grace of God, we have amazing people joining us tonight. But before we get into it, let's have a word of prayer. Father, we just thank you for this opportunity, oh God. We thank you for all the very many blessings, oh God, that you have bestowed upon us. Father, we give you this moment, we give you this time, we give you this conversation and discussion. We ask, oh God, that you have your way in it. Have your way in our hearts, our mind. Father, let it breed change, oh God. Let this be a stepping stone to true, lasting reconciliation within our community and our nation. Father, we thank you and we give you all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Okay, so this panel, In My Shoes, it was birthed from the injustices and the racism, things going on in our community today, in our nation today. Months ago, when we had the death of George Floyd, the Lord put this in our hearts to do something like this so we can come together as a community and discuss issues going on in our nation, in our community as a black community. The first panel that we had, we discussed the protests that were going on at that time. We discussed the social injustice, the black community, and we brought up voting. The second panel that we had some guests here as well. We had the police department here. We had a principal here from the education department, and we had a political commentator. And these people helped us understand a few things about the education system, about social justice, about the black community, voting, and Christianity. Now, this panel aims to bring reconciliation between the black community itself. There may be some misconceptions, there may be some stereotypes or some prejudice going on within our community as a whole, between Africans, between African Americans or black Americans. So if we aim, or if the goal is to bring any type of reconciliation in our nation, then we first have to figure out some things within our community as a whole. So this panel, I believe, by the grace of God, will help us gain some insight to some of the things that the black community, the Africans, the African Americans, the black community as a whole, what we struggle with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give the opportunity for our panelists to introduce themselves. First, they're going to tell us who they are, their name, what they do, where they're from, and why they're so passionate about this topic. So I want to start with, let's go over here, start with Peter, and go this way.
I have to make sure it works. Good evening, everybody. My name is Peter. I am an educator, a principal here in Houston, born and raised in Houston by way of Imo State, Nigeria. And I am incredibly passionate about this conversation because as an educator, I've worked predominantly in low-income environments that serve black and brown kids. So I'm all about giving back to the community, uplifting the black community. That's what my profession is all about. And then secondly, considering what's been going on in the society right now with Black Lives Matter, I think one of the biggest ways that we're going to solve the issue is by uniting, by coming together as a black race, whether it be Caribbean, whether it be African, African American, wherever the blacks are, or us blacks are in the diaspora, it's important for us to unite. I think that is the way we're going to solve it. I don't think it's going to be Trump. I don't think it's going to be Biden. I don't think it's going to be the government. I think we have to solve our own issues. In order to do that, we have to unite. So I think this is the start of that process.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Deborah. I work in nonprofit. I was on the first panel, so I'm really honored that y'all invited me back. I work to empower the Latinx community and immigrant communities to become politically active in their own communities. I'm interested in this conversation because it's necessary. And whether we like it or not, black people, black Americans did not fall out of the sky and land in the United States. You know, we have a story of how we got here. And I want to also give glory to God and Jesus Christ, who is my Lord and Savior. And he created us all differently on purpose and for a purpose.
My name is Shamon Brooks. I'm from Houston, Texas, born and raised. My mother is Black American and my father is Nigerian. And I'm very passionate about this conversation because I feel like over the years it's been a very sensitive topic, a never-ending argument, and I feel like if we all come together on one accord, that's the only way that we can grow. So this is a very important topic for us to be discussing today. And I'm a model and I'm an actress.
Dang, I'm not all that good stuff, but my name is Jamal. I'm a local artist here in Houston. I do a lot of things, DJ, podcast. Work at Apple. I'm a creative pro at Apple, so if y'all need any education on any Apple products, call Apple. Don't come to me. I'm just kidding, but you can come to me. But I'm real passionate about this conversation just because I love dialogue, period. And I think a lot of times things are uncomfortable or awkward because no one wants to say anything about it. And I believe if we could say something about it, we could remove the element of something that's blocking us and actually get to a solution, which is all of us coming together, embracing our differences. Because at the end of the day, like, you know, I'm African American. Like, I'm from New Orleans, one of the most Africanized cities in the nation, but I know nothing about Africa. I know nothing about that. I know no, you know, tongue or no anything. So I'm just excited to have this conversation and obviously learn more.
I forgot to put my city on the map, too. I apologize. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, so shout out to the 816.
All right, cool. So if you're watching right now, we're streaming on all platforms. That's Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So whatever platform that you're on right now, if you could if you could share it with somebody and get this message out, we believe this is a very, very important topic and discussion. And you can send in your questions. Whatever questions you have, no matter how raw they are, please send them. Please type them in, and when we have the opportunity, we will address them here on this platform. So let's get started. The first question I'm going to ask is to both parties, actually, and has to do with stereotypes. I guess let me tell you the stereotypes so you guys can follow along. The topics. I'm going to tell you guys the topics so you guys can follow along. First, we're going to hit stereotypes. Then we're going to talk about self-reflection. We're going to talk about identity crisis. We're going to talk about the history and community influence. So right now, the topic is stereotypes. So you can, whatever questions that you're asking or that you're typing in, that you're sending in, please have them be according to the topic that we're on at the moment, okay? So the first question that I will ask to both the Africans and the African Americans on this panel is, what stereotypes have you heard about one another? So those are the first two questions. So I guess I'm going to start with the Africans, right? What stereotypes have you heard about the African Americans?
Tell us what you know.
Don't be afraid. Now, this panel, like, we want to be as open and as real as we can, okay, in the house of God. So, as open and as real as we can. So, the stereotypes that you've heard about each one. As an African, what have you heard about the African American people? Or maybe growing up or something like that. Like, what have you heard or what have you experienced or what do you think? What is the stereotype that...
I'll start. So I think one of the stereotypes of African Americans is African Americans are lazy. African Americans don't want to work hard, don't value education, don't value opportunities, don't really care to advance much. In terms of relationships, African American women, you know, typically, you know, the baby daddy, baby mama, both men and women, right? Baby daddy. There's a culture of not valuing relationships, not valuing marriage. I think it's seen as an American thing to not value kind of like a long-term commitment, partnership, etc. So there's a culture of like baby mama, baby daddy. That's also, I think, a stereotype I've also heard. Or at some point believed.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, for me, I'm half and half. So I always find myself, hearing things from both sides. And basically a lot of what he's saying, black people, they don't like to work, they have babies out of wedlock, they're this, they're that, they're gangbangers, they sell drugs, but, I know that's not the case for all, but that's one of the
Stereotypes that we hear about.
Yeah. She just reminded me of others. So violent.
They're violent.
So
okay.
violent, gangsters, they like to sag their pants. Dressing professionally is not really what they do. Hood, ghetto, dirty, bad, just when you think about anything negative.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Anything.
So nothing about the food at all? Like the food ain't popping?
Fat,
Nothing about
maybe
the music
fat.
and nothing?
it's fattening. Is that what you said?
Okay.
Fat, like, sure, fattening food.
Oh, you mean like as a community, they're
Like the food.
Bigger,
they're fatter.
out of shape,
Out of shape.
unhealthy.
Eating healthy, we eat rubbish food.
Wow. Okay.
So.
All right. So okay, going to the other end. As an African American, what stereotypes have you heard about the African community?
Most that I've heard have to do with African men, and it's that they are abusive to their wives. They have multiple wives. That they are dirty, they live in huts, that they are poor, they're diseased, they have flies on their foreheads all day, every day, everywhere. And that the language, like I hear a lot of things about their names.
Okay. Like how their names?
Like that the names are really hard to pronounce, that they make no sense, that it's like rubbish
okay.
names, I guess,
okay.
if we're going to use that word. I don't really hear much about African women, though, to be honest.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So, with the stereotypes that you've heard, just a follow-up question for me. With the stereotypes that you heard, how many of those have actually become, or that you actually see that these are something that you experience? Like you hear them, but how many of those do you actually experience?
I think my experience has been, so growing up in New Orleans, I don't think I've ever met anybody from Africa or like knew, anything. So when I got here to Houston, because of Katrina in 2005, it was my first time ever encountering somebody from Nigeria because he was in one of my classes. And so his name on the side was something totally different what he told me. But when he got in the classroom, the teacher pronounced his full name. And I'm like, that ain't, who are you talking to? And it's like, no, that's him. So, and I'm like, yo, like, where are you from? And he was like, here. And I'm like, I'm from here. But something's different.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, my parents are Nigerian. I'm like, oh, snap. So that unlocked something in my head totally. I'm like, yo, like, that's my first time ever, like, realizing that just because you're black doesn't mean you're African American. Like, you could be from anywhere. And that kind of opened my mind. But stereotypes, I really didn't hear anything about it, like anything.
I actually hear a lot of stereotypes with the men and the women that are African. And you hear a lot of things like they're all scammers, they're users, they'll lie, you hear a lot of horrible things. They stink, they do this, they do that. And like I said earlier, we all know that's not the case, but you hear that often. Like when you say, oh, my friend is Nigerian, or this person is Nigerian, the other person from the other party, their eyes will get big like, ooh, be careful with those Nigerians, or be careful with those Africans. You hear that so much. Mm-hmm. And it's like, who have you been around to feel that way, So.
Oh, before we move on, if anybody else has anything to say, when you're talking, please project into the mic so everybody watching online can hear you clearly. So if you have to put it closer to your mouth,
gotcha.
Cool. But project when you're talking. Now, there was something that Jamal said that I identified with. I was born in Nigeria. Came here when I was young. I was 8 years old. And I've always, coming here that young, I've always been like, it's not been a thought where I was separate. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So when I first got asked that question, you know, because I identify with the black, like I'm a black man or a black child. So when I first got asked that question in high school, I believe it was either high school or middle school, I was like, I'm from, just kind of like what he said, I'm here. And they were saying, well, your name, you know, you have a 10-letter first name. And I'm just like, well, my parents are from Nigeria. So like I disassociated myself early on as a young man, just based on who I was with, the crowd, and, you know, my friendships and everything like that. Is that something that happened? I don't know. Maybe I can ask Peter. Growing up here, I think you said you were born here. Is that something that you did maybe as a young boy when somebody asks you, hey, you know, where are you from, da-da-da, like your automatic response is, yeah, my parents are from, but I'm not from, type thing. Do you identify with that?
I completely identify with that. That was definitely my story. I didn't feel comfortable saying that I was African until maybe high school.
Yeah, okay.
It took me that long. And I think the reason why I didn't feel comfortable saying I was African until high school was because it wasn't cool to be African when I was little.
Yeah.
I was bullied for being African. In my home, my mom would cook with stockfish. So I would go to school smelling like fish.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I smelled like fish.
Yeah.
But the whole class knew. And they would make fun of me for smelling like fish. Yeah. But I went smelling, I thought I smelled fine.
Yeah.
And then I would overcompensate by like drowning myself in cologne. And so that didn't make it better because then I'll go to school and they're like, why you, like, I would like, what is that? Because I would drown myself in cologne because I wanted to smell good.
Yeah.
And so I definitely was not comfortable being African. I definitely was ashamed of being African because I was bullied for it. Yeah.
So also, I was in high school. You just reminded me of something. In high school, and it's actually my next question. We used to have these rap sessions, battles and stuff. Yeah, with everybody flowing and stuff, right? With the pencils just bagging on the table during lunchtime or whatever. And this was the first time I ever heard the term African booty scratcher, right? The first time I've ever heard it was in high school. And this guy was like, they were flowing, and it was a black American versus a African. And this guy was cold. Like, I would say his name here, but like, this guy was cold. Like, he was one of the coldest rappers that growing up, I was like, man, this guy can flow just off the top, And everybody was like on him, like, yeah. And then because the African American, he wasn't really saying anything whatsoever. But when he dropped the line, nothing but, you're nothing but an African booty scratcher or something like that, the whole place erupted. Like, it went crazy. Like, he just killed them. So the question is, where did that term come from, and what does it mean?
Probably from a white person or a person that's not, and I'm being, like, sincere. Somebody from the outside looking in. Yeah. The thought of saying that wouldn't even cross my mind. Like I wouldn't be that creative to say, because at the end of the day, like, I could be talking to you or talking at you, but you look like me. So if you're scratching, if I'm calling you that, then they for sure calling us that. So that would be my assumption of where it comes from. I'm pretty sure nobody was creative enough just to be like, you're black, you're African booty scratcher. Like, I don't even know where that would come from.
Yeah, that was going to be my response as well. The only thing that I can concoct in my mind is the image that was portrayed of black people during slavery, and they likened us to monkeys. And so that is what I can, in my knowledge, I carve out as a potential source, because I was never taught that. I was never... Like, the only reason I know that exists is because my Nigerian friends have told me that's what they were called. And I think that the disassociation, all of us disassociate with Africanness because of slavery or because of the trauma that is the United States and Africa. So.
It's interesting that you say that you feel, Jamal,
Yeah.
that it came from white people. When you say that, I immediately had a reaction because my experience has not been that white people have called me that. My experience is that black people have called me that. So that's my experience. And so it's interesting that you have that perspective because I believe that it came from blacks. I feel like there's a divide, there's a disconnect. I don't, as much as you like, oh no, we're one, we're not. I mean, my hope is that we can become one, but currently we're not one. And so growing up, there's always been this divide, and I was bullied growing up, and I was called African booty scratcher from people who looked like me. It wasn't from white people. It was from black people.
Right. And what you saying that, because I agree with what you're saying, and that's been your experience. I'm from a place where all the crime that I've seen hasn't been white people versus, but it also hasn't been because you're black. Like, if I'm killing the black man or black on black crime, it's not because you're black. So the race element part is removed. And I think we're all taught these things. Like, think about it. As black people, how do we go from right after Reconstruction, being together, having communities, running businesses together, being united, to all of a sudden, in about the 70s, late 60s, 70s, 80s, African booty scratchers come to the play. Like, where did that come from? You know what I'm saying? So I'm always like, if we're being taught all these things and we're taught that Africans are bad or scammers or whatever, I'm like, who came up with that? Like, where did this come from? Like, and I always rack my brain because, like, yeah, we're all living in the same community, so, like, the verbal abuse is happening amongst us, but a lot of times, like, the media could throw something up there and just sit back and watch it and let us fight over it, and then that's how it normally happens. From what I assume, I don't know for sure, but that's what I think.
Yeah, so there's a term called internalized racism. And for any oppressed group, there's an internalized sexism, there's internalized all types of isms. And so what happens is the oppressor teaches the oppressed to oppress each other. And so that's where the N-word comes in. Black on black crime only exists because the media created it. There's no white on white crime. Why we not ask that question? What? But these things are being orchestrated and taught to us. There's a reason why black people don't associate with being African. There's a reason, and it's not because we taught ourselves to do that. How did we get here? We are of African descent. So I want to apologize on behalf of African Americans who cannot represent themselves and tell you that I am sorry. We are sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
But I also want to tell you that just because we may have enacted it doesn't mean that we created it, if that makes sense.
It's not
We're
a genuine
doing what
thought.
we were taught to do.
Yeah, like what she was saying, I think it has a lot to do with the schools and them not teaching about black history and educating people on where they're from, because I found myself a lot arguing with my classmates with the same skin color and everything, and we're going back and forth. I'm not African, you African. I'm like, okay, so you don't know your history. You haven't watched Roots, have you? Because it doesn't make any sense. Like, where do you think you come from? Do you think you just, like she said, do you think you just fell out the sky? Or you're African. Even if your name doesn't say you're African, you are African. You were brought here. Your ancestors were brought here on a slave ship.
Wow.
So.
Wow. All right, so if you're just joining us, please like and share this feed. And also, you can send in your questions. We're receiving questions. And those that are here as well, if you have a question, please feel free to ask at any time pertaining to the topic that we're on. Right now, we're on stereotypes. Our next question comes in the form of this. We were just talking about like the biases. We just kind of threw that out there. Some biases, some distrust. Where did that come from, or when did that start?
Are you speaking specifically about distrust between blacks, like African Americans and Africans?
Yes. 16, 14.
Hello.
So that's when between the community itself, like the biases and the distrust, you know, all the divide. When did that start? Why?
I would say that is a human thing, if I can be really honest with you. It has to do with pride. Tribalism existed before slavery. And I mean, it happened in heaven before earth was created. Like Satan is the originator of pride. He created pride. So it's really, that is really what it is. And, you know, once humans fell from grace, pride entered the picture.
So you believe that one of us in the community, one side raised itself above the other, as far as we're better than. Okay.
It has to be. I think from my experience, from what I've seen in the conversations that I've been able to have from my friends that are African, like from Africa, a lot of times, it comes to this, it's the picture that America has painted of black people, right? So if you're coming from Africa, you already have, you know, in your mind what African Americans are going to be like. So now you're just waiting to see if they fulfill that stereotype. You're waiting to see the hoodlum or the thug or the you know, the baby mama, baby daddy drama. Like, you're looking for that. And 9 times out of 10, when you're looking for something, you're going to find it. Like, if you're looking for the bad, you're going to find the bad. You'll overlook all the good, and I think a big element that's missing is understanding. No one is trying to look at and say, okay, let me understand you and you understand me. No one is saying that. Everyone's saying, like, well, you're a failure. Well, you don't understand this. Well, your name is this and da-da-da. And I'm like, yo, what are y'all fighting about? Like, what are we talking about? I guarantee, like, my mind opened up when I met, you know, Ogo years ago. And being able to be around his family. He's from Nigeria. And me understanding certain things. So I'm like, okay, now if I could think that an African woman is being rude, she's not being rude. Culturally, they just talk loud. So if they're talking loud, like I see it all the time in the Apple store. People are like, man, you got to handle that customer. She's rude. I'm like, she's not rude. You just don't understand culture. Yeah. And when I'm talking, they're like, man, how did you get her to do that? I'm like, I didn't get her to do nothing. I sat down and understand what she was telling me, and I responded.
That's humility. That is humility.
That's good. That's good. So we're going to move on to our next topic, which is reflections. Okay, we're going to go to reflections. Remember, if you have any questions, please send them in, and we'll address them as we get them. The next question we're going to be looking at is, when was the first time any of us here have experienced discrimination, and did it affect your friendships as a result of it? If you can remember, like, is there any time, or when was the first time you experienced that, and as a result of that, did it affect your friendships with each other?
Like, do you mean discrimination from the other group, or just period? Yeah, between each other, as far as Africans and African Americans, because that's what we're talking about here today. That's every question that that we're addressing is between the Africans and the African Americans. So discrimination between us. When was the first time you experienced that, and did it affect your relationships or your friendships after?
Okay, so I had a lot of friends. Majority of my friends were Nigerian, went to school with them and everything. And some of them, their parents did not want them hanging around with black Americans. And obviously my name does not give me away as a Nigerian. So they don't know that I'm Nigerian, but I'm not about to sit here and prove myself for you to like me. So there was one situation that took place. It was when I was in high school. We had practice after school, and I needed a ride home. My mom was working late. I had no ride home. And so I asked my friend, I was like, hey, can I get a ride home? And she was like, my dad doesn't like black Americans. He's not going to give you a ride. I was like, girl, please, my mama do your mama hair. You know, I'm going to get a ride. I was so sure I was going to get a ride. Her dad pulls up, she gets in the car, and they left. I thought I was going to get a ride. I did not get a ride because her father does not like black Americans, and my name does not give me away as an African. Wow. So that was my experience. And she was my friend, but it's not her fault because that's what she's being taught in the house. So I can't be upset with her, you know, but it bothered me because I was like, this is crazy. We live in the same neighborhood. I couldn't get a ride home. So that was my experience.
Africans are savage.
But I mean, okay, does anybody else have an experience like that or
Thank God
similar?
I haven't had, not that I know of, not like that I'm probably behind my back, but I don't know about that.
Yeah. Nobody?
I have had my Nigerian friends, or I'll say African, because there are some that are East African as well, speak pidgin around me, knowing that my ear is not accustomed to the dialect, and they won't translate. They'll just let me just be lost. And that, did it affect the friendships? I'm pretty vocal, so I'll bring it up and be like, that's not right.
Yeah.
But I'll say something about it, but it did make me feel isolated and just very visible.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask why you were offended?
Because I knew that they were doing it because I could not understand. I know that they were doing it because I could not understand. It was to highlight she does not know what we're saying. She's not really African. But if it were, because I also understand that me coming in as the minority, I don't have a problem with submitting and humbling myself. This is y'all culture. This is y'all thing. It's my job to learn, to be an observer and to figure it out. But if you're doing it with the intent that you know that I don't know what you're talking about, then it's different.
Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
I feel like when Spanish people are in front of me, Mexicans are in front of me, they speak Spanish, I'm okay with that. When Asians are in front of me, they're speaking Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, I'm okay with that. I feel like at this point, we have been stripped of our identity, right? Like our cultures have been ripped from us, our names, our languages, and I'm empowered to speak Igbo. If there's another Igbo around that speaks it, I'm going to speak. And I don't care about how anybody else feels about that because I'm empowered to speak my language. I love my language. I'm proud of my language. So I'm not going to speak English. English is not even that's not our language. Right. So I feel like I'm not going to not speak my actual language to not offend someone else. Right. So I feel like if people are around speaking pidgin, that's a language that white people told us wasn't okay. And so we should feel empowered, right? That's why we speak English. That's why our official language is English in Nigeria, right? Because white people came to us and said, your languages are savage they're uncivilized. They're barbaric. So here's English. And we're not going to, white people they weren't like, oh, we're going to let's learn Pidgin. Let's learn Igbo. Let's learn Yoruba. Let's learn Urobo. They didn't say that. They said, no, we're not going to learn your languages. Your languages are uncivilized. We're going to teach you English, right? So I just feel empowered to speak whatever you were born naturally speaking. That's my take on it.
That's good. I mean, I've told this story so many times. Do we have a question? Okay, cool. Let's take that question and forget my story.
Okay. So the question is, do you think that parents play a role in the discrimination within the community? And do parents and their opinions of the other side influence how blacks or Africans view each other?
Wait, one more time?
Do you think that parents play a role in the discrimination within the community? And do parents and their opinions of the other side influence how blacks or Africans view each other?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I grew up already being indoctrinated that black people were thugs, black people were violent, don't hang around black people. Who's your friend? What is that name? Tyrone, Davant, who is Tyrone? That was, it was unacceptable to be friends with black people. It was unacceptable to hang around black people. The perception was that black people would make me a bad child If I was doing something good at home, it's because, okay, I'm a Nigerian. If I do something bad, who are you learning that from? You know, who are you hanging around with, right? So the perception, again, is like, definitely black people are negative and thugs and don't hang around them. And it wasn't until I went to high school, well, and schools reinforced it, right? So in schools, I was typically in
Society
AP classes.
reinforces it.
Society does too, right? Which is, part of schools. But I think I grew up, I was in AP classes, honors classes, advanced classes. And so most of my peers would be Asian, everything but black. And then there would be another Ogechi in the class and Chibuike in the class, right? But in the regular classes, the less advanced classes, the regular classes, the normal classes, that's where most of the black people would be. And so that also reinforced my mindset around like, wow, the blacks are in those classes, they are lazy. Oh yeah, they don't want to work hard. And it wasn't until I went to high school, or rather college, to where I understood institutionalized racism, systemic racism. Like, it's not their fault. They're not choosing to be in these classes. Is that society has already deemed them to be this way and has created a system that perpetuates inequality and racism and discrimination. So,
Okay, I guess this would be a good follow-up. It says, what can we do to get rid of the stereotypes we all have of each other, and should we discourage both groups from watching movies or shows that provide a false image of each other?
Well, I got a minor in Black Studies on purpose, and I will.
On purpose?
I completed it,
It's
so
a great
it was on
purpose.
purpose. No, but
I support that purpose.
The institution was targeting that program, like they ended it after I left. But so it was actually hard to do that, to finish it. But I did that with the intent to gain knowledge, gain the truth, so that I can teach my kids differently. And I'm very intentional about pursuing my master's at a HBCU, because not all education is created equal. It's not. I don't care what you say. It's not. So my parents didn't have the "we are from" here. This was our original language. This is how we got here. Our people traveled through this. Institutional racism is this. They didn't have that to give to me. And now that I have the privilege of higher education, I'm going to teach my kids. We are from Africa. This is how we got here. And this is what's true and this is what's not.
To answer the question about should we stop watching things that reinforce stereotypes, I feel, personally, no. For me, I think that watching things that perpetuate stereotypes allows me to think critically about what's true and what's not true. So I naturally question things anyway. So I take things from face value. So I can watch things that reinforce stereotypes. I can watch things that perpetuate inequality and ask questions about it and think critically about it, as opposed to just believing what I see. And I think that's what we need to teach.
Yeah.
We need to teach our kids and our people to think critically about what we see, the messages, the images that are given to us.
Yeah.
Like, we need to question them, combat them, fight them, as opposed to just getting rid of them. Because I don't think they're ever going to go away.
I agree with that, because my follow-up question was that, because yes, for you do critically think, but a lot of us probably don't process or know how to do it at all. Right. So we see it, we consume it, and we act on it, right? So that's a good word. Like, if you do see something, because I don't know if you can encourage people to stop watching these things, but at the same time, I don't know how effective that would be, because a lot of the things we watch and consume and see on a daily have, those things in it. So it's better for us to be able to think critically when we see all kinds of things. Did you have something?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say that we shouldn't act based off what someone else told us. We should get to know people for who they are, because, like he was saying, a lot of people don't really think. They're being told what to think. You're not given a chance to think for yourself. So how do you know who you like and who you don't like and who you want to be around or whatnot? You get what I'm saying? So if you get to know people for who they are, what they are, understand their cultural background or whatever the case is, I think it'll help the situation. it'll make a better tomorrow. Because just assuming that this person is bad and this person is like this person is like that because of what your mom or your dad told you, how is that helping anything?
So even as a African man or woman, when you were growing up, were you ever raised to think that, or were you ever raised, I think you kind of answered this question a little bit, were you ever raised to believe that you were better than the black Americans? That you were better than them, like you were groomed to believe that you were better than them?
Yeah, I think it sounds horrible to say, but I think that if the perception was that black Americans are lazy and they're thugs and they're violent and they don't want to do anything with their lives, I think the perception about me is that I'm going to do something. So I knew growing up, like the expectation was that I'm going to be somebody. And I think that I did grow up believing that we're raised to believe that we are different.
Different, yeah.
And better.
Okay.
That is perception. We're better. And not and better because and better
That was tough.
And better because we want more. The perception is that we want more. We value advancement. We value education. We value degrees, etc. So.
Okay, even growing up, for both sides, right? Growing up, did all of these things affect who you date?
I feel like if you don't like somebody, just don't date them. Like if you got something against, the race or whatever, just, no, is he by force? Like you don't have to date that person if you feel a certain type of way about them.
Okay, so when you, how do I really ask this
But do
question?
you feel like
down.
you are more prone to date Africans or more prone to date black Americans or just anybody who come like
Based on the stereotype, right?
Based on the stereotype.
Okay, so would you prefer like an African versus an African American because of the stereotype? Is that what you're asking? Yes?
for me dating?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
For
gotcha.
me, dating is more around value alignment as opposed to who you are. So I think, which is value alignment. So I think I'm more prone to date maybe Nigerians because Nigeria values. The perception is that the values are more aligned.
Yeah, there's like an understanding. Like I can't foresee like an African American woman being like, oh, I'm all submerged in the African culture. Like I know about, I'm like, you don't know anything. If they don't, if they don't know. But if you do know, then I get it. So you're like, so even if she was African American, if she's still aligned with your values, which are pretty strong in your root, in your heritage or where you're from, then like that's a yes.
So were any of us forced into a particular, like, to go a particular way in like dating or marriage? You were in, Auntie, use your mic.
I want to think about my thoughts first before I get into the mic and project it into the world.
Cancel culture real, man. I'm trying not to get canceled over here.
No, but I guess as I got older, especially college, and I went through a phase where I was, and I, real black power, commit, all of that. We thank you for the deliverance, Father. But yeah, I was super radical, and I was just like, I'm gonna be with an African man. I have to. My kids have to be blacker than me. Huh? What does that even mean?
That's a real thing. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Like for us, for us African Americans, like erasing or bringing your bloodline back to Africa is a real thing because it's a possibility.
Yes, it is a real spiritual warfare as well, but that's another conversation. But my parents, as I came home and I was just being radicalized and just Africaned up, as they thought, my mother was like, hey, bro, you got to chill. Like, you cannot, he gonna beat you. He's gonna have all the wives, bro. Like, you cannot be with an African man. So I was explicitly encouraged not to be with African men because of the stereotypes. I am currently not with an African man. He's African American, but I love him so much. Hey, boo.
So anybody else? What about you?
No, I feel like it's all based off like the mindset and things like that. And, you know, once you see like how they think and how they move, you know, then that's how you know if the person is for you. Because you can't just say, oh, because this person is African, oh, because this person is black. No, it don't work like that. Because what if you do get the dream guy, like from the outside image?
No, I mean, like, did your folks, like, or your dad is African?
Nigerian,
Nigerian.
yes, Igbo.
And your mom is
Black
Black
American.
So in that, like, are you encouraged, like, do they?
Nah.
So it's just anybody?
It was, nah, I didn't have this problem.
Is it that you just decided not to have the problems, or they're just
No, it was never
brought up?
It
They
was never brought
up
up like, oh, don't bring no such and such home. I never had that problem.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Cool. Follow question. Did the prejudice between African and African Americans affect, no, I just read that. When slavery was brought up, does the history of slavery affect any of us here emotionally? Like,
Absolutely.
especially, I guess maybe I should throw this even more to the African side. Does the issue of slavery, every time slavery is brought up, every time racism is brought up, things like that, like, does that affect you emotionally at all? Do you identify with it?
Growing up, my mother, like, she made us learn about slavery and things like that because, like I said earlier, it wasn't being taught in schools. So when Roots came on and all this stuff was showing on television, she made us sit down and watch it, and she sat there and she educated us on it because, you know, if she didn't do that, we'll be at school in our history classes, and we'll just be lost. So, you know, seeing the things that our people went through, our ancestors went through, is very painful because, like, wow, our people were really treated like animals, and they went through a lot for us to be where we are today. You know, so definitely it affected a lot of people because it's not something easy to look at or hear about.
Yeah. Do we have a question from online? I'm sorry. It's a different topic.
So I will say one thing. The first joke I've ever heard from an African American was, what did Chris say? He said,
Called him out.
well, I ain't gonna say his last name. But he was like, blah, 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 blah. Y'all just got caught. He was like, it's y'all fault because y'all got caught. And I sat there and I was like, oh, dang. So he was saying like the joke was in the terms of like African American, like your African people got caught and brought over here. My people didn't. So it's like we survived and you didn't. That was like one of the most heaviest things I think I heard when I was like 17. But it really didn't dawn on me till like I turned like 22. I was like, because it always stuck with me because I was like, nah, that ain't. Because then you hear like, well, Africans sold Africans into slavery. You hear all this other stuff. So like you're just trying to figure out like the, you know, your way in all of this. Because like one thing I can say, like one of my best friends, he's Ghanaian. He knows he's from Ghana. Mm-hmm. I don't know where I'm from. Like, but he knows where he's from. So I'm like, the weight of slavery like took my name away from me, but you still have yours. Yeah. So now to hear that joke or the reason why you don't have your name is because your people were weak and y'all got caught. So that's how like I internalized it.
Wow.
If I can, in love, challenge, especially West Africans, because so many of us come from West Africa, to think about how did slavery impact the continent after we left. There's a huge hole in the continent now. Millions of people were exported in the idea that it just stops there, that people that were left on the continent were not affected by that.
I have a question here. I'm going to ask Jamal. Do you have another question? Okay. Can we hear it?
I'm going to read it as a statement, the way it's written out, and you guys can interpret it. But for the Africans, it says, I don't think many of them understand racism, Jim Crow, the Jim Crow laws, etc., which could be a reason why they, Africans, don't understand the plight of African Americans.
Is that a statement?
It's a statement question.
Can
So
you?
could it be that because Africans don't really understand racism, the Jim Crow laws, and all that, could that be the reason why they don't understand the plight of African Americans?
You got some black people that don't even understand that. Like, and I'm being honest, like, a lot of people, like my mom, growing up, I wasn't taught our history. I wasn't taught, I don't even think to this day, like, I'm on the phone with my mom the other day, and I'm talking about Reconstruction. She was like, son, what is that? What are you saying? And I was like, well, there's a period, an era of time, and I'm breaking that down. And then now it's like I opened up a whole new world for her. And I didn't grow up having that. And I'm about to be 30, and it's like, I'm just now, like, understanding, like, the effects of all of this on us as a people. So, like, I totally understand that statement. Like, because I can only imagine, like, if you're coming over here for opportunity, what are you worrying about, like, what happened back then? That's not your present. So I don't care about mass incarceration and all this other crap, because I'm coming over here because where I'm from, it's terrible. And here, I could be anybody and I could do anything, you know?
Do you believe that, or have you ever believed that Africans do not like you or the African American community?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think, like, I mean, obviously, like, being in Houston, like, changed my life. It opened my eyes to so many things just because it's so diverse here, and so many ethnicities and so many backgrounds. Like, not only do you have people from Africa, but they're from all parts of Africa. So you can't just be like, oh, Nigerian is this. And like, well, I'm not Nigerian, I'm Tanzanian, so I don't know what you're talking about. So now you have to like, oh, what is that? Like, you got to study on that. But I think, and I believe me and you had this conversation, and I was saying, like, it was crazy to me when I got here that, okay, you got to deal with white people not liking you. Asians don't mess with you either. The Indian community, they for sure don't mess with you. Then you got your own community. We're fighting each other. Yeah. And then you got Africans that don't like you. So I'm like, who in the world likes me in this thing?
Man.
Like, so another form of tribalism happened. You're like, and this is my four and no more. I don't care if you look like me. I don't care what you look like. Because from what I see, you're making fun of me for some odd reason like I don't understand. Wow. So like, and I can understand that on both sides. But as an African American, you kind of feel like cautious around all other races, including Africans. Including Africans.
Wow. I think we have another question. Are we still in this topic? Yeah, that's fine.
Why do Ethiopian women get praised for their looks by African Americans, but the same people look down on West African women?
I would like to endeavor to answer that because I get likened to Ethiopian a lot. I'm not. I just did my ancestry, so there's a little Kenyan in there. But it has to do with, one, exoticization. You look different, first of all, and then you also look more European because of your features, because of your skin tone, because of your hair type. So anything that is closer to white on the spectrum we've learned to beautify and value more. So I really think that could be what it is.
Go ahead, go for it.
100%. Ethiopians and Eritreans typically don't look like the stereotypical African. The stereotypical African is dark skin, black, kinkier hair, etc. So the Eritrean, the European, the Ethiopian typically looks, like she said, more Eurocentric, which it can be seen as more beautiful.
Is there a colorism within the African community? Like if you're darker or lighter, lighter's better, darker's whatever?
Yeah, there's actually a new documentary on Netflix called Skin that came out.
Yeah, I saw that.
But there's a huge culture of bleaching in Africa, Nigeria, and I think in the black community in general. Maybe not in America as much, but for sure in the Caribbean. Yeah, for sure in the Caribbean and in various parts of Africa. So yeah, for sure. There is, again, I think it's racism, colonization. White people came, Europeans came to Africa, and we have this perception that whiter is better. So there is this culture of bleaching your skin and wanting to be lighter skin.
Yeah. We're going to go to the next topic. The next topic is identity crisis. If you're watching, if you're watching online, please remember you can send in your questions and we will address them. Right now, we're going into identity crisis. So every question that you send in, please have them address this specific topic. So this question comes in. It goes like this. For those who are African or first generation, do you feel that you have a greater sense of identity since you can trace your lineage back to the specific nation or continent?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel like I have a greater sense of identity. Just like Jamal was saying, he doesn't know where he's from. I can identify the village that I'm from, the village my father comes from, the village my mom comes from. I have an Igbo middle name, an Igbo last name. I can speak Igbo as well, so I know exactly where I'm from, and I think that impacts my value set, the way I approach life, the way I show up in spaces. I know that, I'm an Igbo man, right? And that comes with values. That comes with, a perception, a strong perception, a positive perception of who I am. And so that allows me to show up in spaces that I think that those who don't know where they're from, there's an impact there. There's a void. And I feel like when I see, for example, a video this video comes to mind of two young black men fighting. And there are black male and female adults egging on the fight, but between two young kings. And I feel like if you know who you are, if you know who we are, there's no way that you would think that this is okay. There's no way that you would think that it's okay and cool and dope to see two young kings fighting each other, and adults are like egging on the fight between two young boys, right? And so I think because I know who I am and because we know who we are, I think we just we show up in the world different. The way we treat each other is just different. Like we're family, we're brothers. If I meet an Igbo man, we're brothers, like immediately, as opposed to wanting to, fight each other, I think.
So what would you like the other group to know about you as an African man with the stereotypes that are out there right now? What would you like the other group or the African American community to know about you or the African man or male?
Me personally?
Well, I mean, you can right now. You're speaking on behalf of.
I'm a king. I'm royalty. My name is Wabweze, which means child is king. So I'm a king. I show up as a king. I'm ambitious. I'm a hard worker. I love. I'm a giver. I'm a protector. I'm a fighter. I'm strong. I think those are the things I would want them to know.
What about some misconceptions that we have? For example, from the black community, what are some misconceptions that we have or maybe other people have about the black community, about the African American community that you would like to clear up that it's not true? Is there anything?
Almost everything you see in the media. But I think our creativity got shot a lot. If you think about what we were able to do when we got to this country, on top of everything that was pushed in our face, all the obstacles you had to overcome, you had the whole nation. This government is against you. The government is against you. This is not like just the regular people. The government is against you, right? And you come here and then you create. Like, one of my favorite things that black people created, obviously, that I love the most is hip-hop. And the reason why I like that is because it's your expression of what's going on, and I can't tell you nothing about it. I can't go up to NWA and say, hey, you can't make this music. Why? This is what's happening in my community. So what are you trying to tell me? And it goes beyond that, because one of my buddies, he's Ghanaian, but he lives in Canada. And we were talking, we had a conversation, and I'm gonna bring this back. And he was telling me the importance to them that they're taught as kids is to save money to buy property, right? And I was like, that's so funny, because here in America, I'm taught to either make it playing basketball or football or on a microphone rapping in some kind of way. Those are my only two way out. But even when I think about that, that's not the only two ways out, but that's the way out that us as black people have made popular and more prominent. It's like, we can do this. The creativity of a black person, like when I look at somebody who owns their own and have their own and you're black, and I'm like, you created that out of nothing because you had nothing to build upon, like if you go all the way back, obviously. But misconceptions that I would like for people to break is like, you know, your creativity, you shouldn't be ashamed of it in any kind of way that it's coming out of you. Like, that's the one thing that they try to suppress, but that's the one thing they want to attach their name on to get the money from it. You know what I'm saying? So.
I would like to echo what he said. One, the fact that we survived, like literally are still breathing people. Like the Middle Passage, only 50% of the slaves made it. 50%. So we are the cream of the crop. We descend from the strongest, survival of the fittest. They were the fittest. Secondly, he said what I was going to say as far as our ability to create under pressure. The Harlem Renaissance. What? Like, we created a hybrid culture that the world consumes. The world consumed. And is going to consume forever. And then number 3 is our ability to always be in front of the game, ahead of the curve. We are proprietary in everything that we do. And also, I don't know how 400 years of free labor can translate to lazy. Breaking backs. Capitalism, literally capitalism is a global phenomenon because of the slave trade, because of African people in the Caribbean and the United States. The cotton gin came from our country.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know where this idea of lazy, well, I know where it comes from, but yeah, it's impossible for that idea to stand when you compare it with how long we've been working for free.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I say black people aren't lazy, they're traumatized, and they're tired. Tired and traumatized. I talked to my uncle who's 72. I said, how do you feel with everything going on right now? He said, it's crazy that when I was 16, the same things I saw when I was 16, I see when I'm 72.
Wow.
And he's sick and elderly and has, you know, issues or whatever. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, this is just reality. Like, if he goes today or tomorrow, the last thing he remembers the news talking about is black man killed by the... I mean, he was 16, he heard the same thing. So I'm like, we're not lazy, traumatized, tired.
Yeah.
So.
We have another question. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something, Jamal?
Yeah, I was going to say also with that, if you notice, every time, like with African Americans, you know, black people, it's like every time they were climbing the ladder, they were always kicked back down. They invented so many things that the white people took credit for. And with that happening, it's like, how could you rise when you know that everything that you create is being ripped away from you?
Wow.
I encourage everybody to just Google. There's a BuzzFeed video of a white lady. She tried to go 7 days without using an invention that was created by white people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, black people. Ooh, she could not.
She
at the
couldn't
end
go
of the
a
day,
week
she could not.
without.
So go Google
Killer
it.
Mike tried to go, I think, 24 hours only using black-owned stuff. Only thing he was able to do was sleep on the bench, and it still wasn't black-owned.
I saw that. Was that on Netflix?
Yeah.
Do we have a question?
Okay. Why do Africans get upset or offended when African Americans embrace their culture as if it was theirs?
One more time.
Why do Africans get upset or offended when African Americans embrace their culture as if it was theirs?
As if it was theirs.
As if.
Like if we're wearing like African attire or like
Yeah.
the whole like Black Panther type thing, like
There was a huge thing when I don't know who did it, the Republicans, somebody, like they put on kente cloths and stuff like that. There was a whole, Nancy Pelosi, right? It was a whole thing. Like it was, I don't know if you guys saw that. So they kind of took offense to that. But that's a real question. What do you guys think?
I mean, I'm laughing because I've been there.
Okay.
So a friend was, I think for me, the anger comes when you wear it and you don't understand. So you're wearing it because it's popular. You're wearing it because
Or it's
cool,
fashionable.
Or it's fashionable.
Right.
Okay.
Boom.
Yeah.
And it's what's fashion? It's appropriation. In my mind, it's appropriation, right? You're using it for your benefit, It looks cool, but you don't really know what it means. You don't know where it comes from. You don't know the history. You don't understand it, but you think it's cool. So you think it's cool, but this is my culture. I live this. I breathe this. I was born this, like with this, and you think it's cool. Like that's where but then again, an African friend of mine pushed me in my thinking and was like, is it appropriation when it's theirs too? So if you're black and you're African, is it really stealing? Is it really appropriation if it's ours? And so I was like, oh, that's good. That's so it pushed my thinking on that.
I mean, the question could be flipped. Like, are African Americans mad if Africans appropriate American culture, black American culture? Like, if you're sagging your pants or whatever is deemed as black, like if girls are like wearing a hairstyle of the 90s or something like that, you see what I'm saying? It's like, and I would be like, no, like, because you're one of us. Like, I don't, like, at that point, I wouldn't care. I'm like, yeah, you're one of us. Yeah, wear your Jordans. Like, I don't care.
What's beautiful about the diaspora, though, is even though we have variations, of course, they are all derivatives of each other. Yeah. That's what makes it different from someone of Euro descent appropriating, is that you can track, whether distantly or closely, the relationship between the things in our cultures. So
Well, just to follow up with that, there's this thing where African Americans, they don't like to be called, I don't know if anybody has heard this, but they don't like to be called African Americans. They would rather be just called Americans or blacks, right? Why? Never made sense. But why do you think that is? Why do you feel like some people in the community choose to separate themselves or to distance themselves from this African heritage?
Because they don't connect. There's a lack of connection or a lack of understanding.
But where does that come from? Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to say a lot of that started with like Discovery Channel. When they show Africa, they always show the uncivilized parts of Africa. And so when someone is being called an African and they're like, oh no, I'm black, I'm just American, it draws back to looking at the naked people that are running wild and stuff on Discovery Channel, because that's what they want us to view Africa as. If you've never been there, you won't know. But that's, yeah.
I want to push a little bit. I don't think that they want to show the uncivilized part of Africa. They just don't show a complete Africa.
Okay.
Because there are Africans who do live in huts. My grandmother, when I visited in '94, her rapa was on her waist, her breasts were out. And it was okay. And she, and she put my head, I was in her breast, like, and it held me. And I was, okay, grandma, like, that's just what it is. I mean, but that's culture, that's what it is. And so there is Africa that looks that way.
Yes.
But that's all they show.
Yes.
And I think black people don't connect to that. But then if they see Victoria Island, if they see cities that we have, the mansions that we have, right?
Exactly.
They just don't see that part of Africa.
Yeah.
I would argue that it's a coping mechanism for trauma. There's like an ethnic bastardization that African Americans experience where we don't know. And so in order to solve for that, it's like if you don't know who your parents are, like if you grow up with one parent and you don't know who your mother is or your father is, you're not going to identify with that parent. So in order to solve for the missing variable, something has to be put there. So we cope and we say, I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to continue life without it. It wasn't here before, I don't need it now.
So in my case, I was a very curious child. My mother, who is Black American, she's the one that raised me. My father, he was absent my entire life. But because I was curious, I did research. I know his name, so I reached out. I found my family in Africa. We communicate all the time. I found my siblings on social media. So, yeah, if you're curious and you really want to know who you are, you're going to find out. Outside of ancestry, like I ask questions, that's how I know who I am.
That's crazy, because you have the direct link via your father. Our direct link, I don't know where that's at. Like, if that makes any sense. So I think I really can't speak like on people who believe in that, because I just believe like, I mean, I know, like, I'm not gonna allow like America to take the African off my name. Like, that's where you came and got me from. Like, so don't take that off. But I understand, like, now we have Africans that are here, free will, trying to do things, and I'm like, brother, like, I'm not trying to say that I'm African and all this, but I know I come from there, so I'm not gonna walk around repping it like crazy, but like, I know that's a piece of me, if that makes any sense. But Peter said it like right dead on. Like, if I can't identify with it, like, I'm not gonna claim it. Like, I just can't. Like, I just can't, because there's no connection point for me personally.
Okay, so this kind of follows up with that, but for Africans, and this is from a first-generation African. Not being African enough for the Africans, and not being African American enough for African Americans, where do you fit in?
I don't have anything to say.
I feel like I fit in on both sides because I know who I am, I know where I come from, and I can relate on both ends. So I don't have those problems. I can understand the language, you know, I'm not fluent with speaking it, but like if I'm around a bunch of Nigerians, I can relate. If I'm around Black Americans, I can relate. So there's like, I don't feel like I'm excluded from them when I'm around them because I know who I am, I know where I come from.
So, I mean, should we view each other as, is a question, and I think it connects. Should we view each other, Africans and Black Americans, should we view each other as a collective group? Because depending on what the answer to this question is, I think that will help whatever young man or whoever sent in that question. Do we view each other as one group or a collective group? And if we don't, why? Go for it. Go for it.
I just don't want to talk too much.
Go for it.
You're on the panel.
You got the mic.
I know.
That's what we're here to do.
The term diaspora, when I learned it, changed everything for me. Because one,
So what is that?
Yeah, break that down.
diaspora, it just means a people group that has been displaced around the globe. So what that did for me was give me a context on the planet. I obviously know I'm from America, but what else? What else? After we get to the border of this country, I have black skin, I have curly hair, that is not the end of the story. And so when I learned the term diaspora, it helped me to understand that I'm a part of a global community of Black people. And so I think that more people perhaps should, one, hear the word, learn the word, and then learn what it means.
It's good. I think we have a question coming from online.
Kind of along the same lines. It asks, why do parents discourage their first-generation children from speaking or understanding their language?
Discourage?
Discourage.
Read it one more time.
Why do parents discourage their first-generation children from speaking or understanding their language?
Anyone?
Some parents.
So the first question was around where do I fit in, right? Like, so
You're not
as an
African
African,
enough.
I was born in Houston, Texas, but I'm Nigerian, you know, so the Africans don't accept me, Americans don't accept me, where do I fit in? I think to answer that question quickly, I just think just find where you fit in. So if this could, like, there are Africans that I don't fit in with, and that's okay. And there are Americans I might not fit in with, but like, I have American friends, I have Black friends, I have African friends. So like, just find your community, find where you fit in. And I feel like I've found that for myself. And then, so the question was, why don't our parents teach first-generation Africans their language?
Or why do they discourage them from learning and speaking their language?
I don't think that it was an active, so in my household, I can speak for my household.
Yeah.
There was not an active, discouragement. I think it's just really hard. because you're in America and you're working all day, and they come home. It's just easy just speaking English. And we go to daycare, we go to school in English all day, and so it just takes effort to speak Igbo at home to kids who are going to daycare and going to school, you know, and come home and they're speaking English. So it just takes effort, like, to actually teach the language at home. So I learned it because I was interested on my own, and I went out to learn it on my own, but not because my parents explicitly taught it to me. But I do also think that there is a self-hate, like a Eurocentric Western mindset that English is better. I mean, you'll find Igbos in Igbo land in Nigeria that don't speak Igbo. You'll find, you know, and so I think it's this perception that white is better, American is better, English is better, which I think comes, you know, from this element of like self-hate, which is why I made it a point to want to learn my language, because we've been taught that it's not good for so long, that it's uncivilized, that, you know, if you speak Igbo, you're bush. But no, like, you can speak Igbo and be beautiful and be royalty and be smart and educated, right? And so I make it a point to speak Igbo when I can, because it's who I am, you know?
That's good. Following up, next question, what we're going to ask is, there's this term, akata, right? So it's not, I want to make this clear, it's not an African term, it's more of a Nigerian term, right? But I guess it's becoming like a mainstream thing. Yeah, so she said something, you guys just didn't hear it. Where did this term come from? What does it mean, and where did this term come from? Anybody? Well, to the Africans.
This is my first time hearing it, so
It's your first time hearing it.
teach me.
I've been called a kata before.
No, never. I don't even know what that is.
No.
I've been called a kata before, so.
Do you know what akata means?
Yes.
What does it mean?
I've been told that it means like stray dog. A stray animal. Yeah.
Wild
People
cat.
walking around calling people wild cats?
A wild animal. Some kind of wild animal.
Wild,
Yeah, wild
animal,
yeah.
So if I'm a wild lion, can I like take that as a positive thing?
It's negative.
It's not.
It's not a positive thing.
Derogatory
Nothing,
way.
nothing. Oh, it's a derogatory.
it's
Period.
not a
Okay.
compliment.
So you can't like take it like how we took the N word back. You can't take that.
It's
No.
different.
We don't want that.
Explain
We
it.
don't want that.
Explain what it means.
I mean, I don't know what it means, but I just know it's negative. So if
Yeah.
we say, oh, they're akata, it's just like we're speaking for Black Americans. Like, typically, Africans or Nigerians will use the term akata in a derogatory way.
Yes.
Okay, so it's being
So-
used towards black people.
It's
Yeah.
Okay.
used towards Black people to
Okay.
identify Black people as African American. So you're akata. I'm not saying you're akata, but that's what.
That's what they'll
That's how
say.
they use it, yeah.
I don't know what it means, so if I
and
was
it's
called
neg-
that, I'd probably be like,
It's not positive. It's
It's
not
more-
something you want to be called.
Yes, it's not positive. It's more of a like the wild animal, wild cat. Like you're wild in a sense where you've strayed away and you don't know where your home is. You know,
it's
so
like dehumanizing.
yeah, so they call you akata, like, oh, you're just this, you're African, yeah, but you're an African that's lost. You're gone away. You've strayed away from home, strayed away from your roots. You don't know where you come from.
Yeah.
Akata, like you're just
Dang.
out there, you know.
And that's hard.
So that's
But when the word is being used, like, you know, for the people that don't know, some Nigerians would say, no, it just means Black American. No, it doesn't mean, no, don't believe that. I'm sorry. Anytime the word akata is being used, just know it is not a compliment. They're saying something, even if they're speaking their language, just know if that akata word is being used, they're probably not saying anything good about you. And some people that I know, they're like in my age range, they use it and they just really don't know the meaning of it. They use it because they heard their parents use it. And it's been said repeatedly, you know, in their household. So when they're using it, it may not be an insult, but you who know the meaning of the word, you're going to take it as an insult.
I mean, I think that's the meaning of it. If I use it, it's not to be derogatory. So if I'm going out to eat and, you know, I'm with Nigerians and I say, oh, my friend is coming. Oh, you know, are they Nigerian? Oh, no, they're Akata. They're American. So I'm not saying it to be derogatory. I'm just saying they're American. Now, the meaning may have come from a place of negativity, but I don't use it in that way.
So it's like the
It's
N-word.
like the N-word.
Y'all just run around saying ends all the
I-
time.
I
Oh, that's
think,
my
you know-
end. Oh, that's my kata.
So I don't think that.
Oh,
I don't think Americans should be.
My name is
insulted.
Jamal, and I do not know what I just said.
So I mean, I guess we can flip it.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the context,
Yes.
because it can be used in a negative, just like they were. It can be used in a negative way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like some people use it and they don't mean anything bad about it. They're just using it because that's the word they've been, told throughout their life. And I feel like it's more of the older generation that used it and they just didn't mean anything good about it anytime they used the word. It's our aunties and our uncles that use that word and just know they don't mean anything good by it.
So you think it's dying out?
Nah.
I don't think it's dying out, but I think it's evolving.
Okay,
Maybe it's evolving.
it's evolving.
The,
Okay.
the meaning.
Have you ever been called an akata? Have you personally?
I can't recall.
I have. Like me, that I was born in Nigeria, whatever the case may be, came here. I have been called an akata, and it wasn't in the, it's just akata boy. No, it's like it was derogatory. Like, yeah, like I don't know if they didn't know I was Nigerian, but
By a Nigerian?
I'm sorry.
A Nigerian called you Akata?
Yes.
Okay. But I guess, how were you acting? Were you acting like
So
a
it's
black
because of
American?
the way I was acting.
How were
So
you acting?
it
Or
merited
if you were
them
behaving,
calling me.
Were you behaving?
Oh my God.
But I can see why they would do that if you were acting in a negative way.
But wait, so you can only call like black people that? Like you can't say that about other people? Now, if you can say it about other people, then I'm cool with it. But if you can only say it about black people, then we got a problem.
Okay.
They got a name
No.
for every different race, but I do. Go ahead.
No. Finish it. Go ahead. Finish it.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
I don't know. I think akata is. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's for black people. I don't think we
Okay.
use
This
the
is my
word.
first time ever hearing this.
So I mean, if you were acting if you had poor behavior, if you had sagging pants, if you had a really tall T-shirt, if you're wearing, Jordans, and you're like I would say, you look Akata.
No. You said
I wouldn't say that, but
no. Look at
I would
what
say
you
you
just
look
said.
like LL Cool
You
J.
look like akata. That's what you just
look
said.
Akata.
You didn't call me. You didn't straight up say akata boy. You didn't call me that. You said
But I
you
can see
look
somebody
like
doing
one.
that.
Okay.
But I will say I have some friends, that live here in Houston. They would go back and visit Nigeria, and the people in Nigeria would call them Akata because they live in America. So that's another difference, with it too. They just call them that
that's where
because
I'm
they came
coming
from
from.
America.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So if I was to go back home now today, as I am, how I speak and everything like that, I believe straight up, I would be called akata.
Yeah.
No, why do you think not?
When I go home, they don't call me Akata because I think it's derogatory.
You know your
They
language
call
and
me Yankee.
Yeah, that's another word.
That's
Okay.
more of a positive.
That's
You're a
another word.
Yankee boy.
Okay.
American boy.
Okay.
American boy.
Okay.
Oyibo something,
Yeah.
right? They wouldn't say
Oyibo.
Ajebo-
Okay.
Ajebo.
But
No.
do we?
Oyibo is the name.
Oyibo. Okay.
Ajebo. It's more empowering words as opposed to derogatory.
But
I've never been called Akata by my people.
A
It's more
Yankee, though, I would like to give just a little historical context to that term.
Come on, sis.
The Union soldiers in the Civil War were
I
called
love
Yankees.
this.
So it's likening you to a white man.
No, but that is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? Like if you're from America, you're considered like white.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have been called Oyibo too,
so I
so
think you hear
it
Oyibo
makes
more than
sense.
anything,
I
though.
think I would hear Oyibo more than Akata. Yeah, I would hear Oyibo more. Okay. Now remember, guys, you that are watching, or even those that are here, please, if you have a question, please feel free either tell somebody to read it out for you, or you can come up and ask your question yourself. Also, if you're online, you can send in your question, type it up, and we will read it here and address it. Also, please try and share this stream. Another question, follow-up question. So, in Christianity, all right, bringing up Christianity, she's like, oh, yes, I love Jesus. So, in Christianity, Christianity is supposed to bind us together. It's supposed to bring us together, right? But this has only, I'm trying to word it well so it doesn't come off as, wrong. This has only served to, or Christianity has somehow served to separate us in a way, right? Why is that? Within the culture, why is that happening? Why has Christianity, instead of bringing us together, why has it separated us?
I think off the top of my head, just to give you a little background into my world. I was a youth pastor for 10 years or something like that. I did that for a while, so talking about this kind of relates. I'm not youth pastoring anymore, not for any ill intent, but I'm just on a journey of discovering what I stand on, what I believe, because I've been taught to think a certain way for a long time, and then you break away, and you're kind of wait, why do you do that? Why do you do this? And I think it simply boils down to somebody believed that they were better than somebody else. Because there's no way for you, if we all say we heard from God, who's lying? There's no way for me to justify that unless I see your actions later on down the road, or I see something manifest itself into something bad. But if you're coming over from another country and you have guns, you have money, and you're saying, hey, God is telling me to tell you to give me your land. And then you're like, huh? Give me your land. And then you give them money and guns and all this stuff. You start killing them. What are they going to do? They're not going to do anything. They're just going to get overtaken. So I think Christianity creates elitism. That's what it does. Because you could say that I live holy because look what I do, and you don't because look at what you do. So now you have everybody pointing the fingers at each other. So it's easier to say, all right, us over here, we going to off them over there because we believe this and they don't. It's all right, yeah, let's do it. So I believe whenever you bring God and Jesus, something that's unknown that people can't explain, into a picture, you can use it at your will.
I went through a similar journey. I have the markings on my body to signify my testimony to the world. There's a difference in the Christ and Christianity. Christianity is the human systems that have been created, the statutes that have been created. Even Jesus himself had issues with the Pharisees, which were the religious people of the time. So when you really get into the book and really analyze who he was as God incarnate on earth, who he was, not who this country or this government said that he was. Learn him from how he described himself in the book. But also, when you really learn about why he came, his word says that he came to set the captives free. Does that look like anything that we saw Europe do with his image? No. So that's how you know automatically that that is a human problem, not necessarily a Christ problem. When you look at the image of Christ that has been pervaded throughout the planet and you compare it with what the word says that he was born into, when he was born, how he looked, how we're going to see him when we get into heaven, he was a brown man. He was a Jew. He was born in what is modern day Palestine. So it's like just with anything else, we have to learn the truth for ourselves. He says, seek and you shall find. The thing that's different from Christianity is from the Christ and other deities. One, he said that greater things you will do after I leave. So there should be signs and wonders that follow our shadows for those who have his spirit inside of him. So there should be physical evidence, always, healing, deliverance. Those things, it says that he took stripes for our healing. That should be a thing that is demonstrated. So it is measurable, concrete evidence, measurable. You can see it with your eyes. And two, there is no other deity that came from their place of residence, their heavenly place, to take the place of the people, to die on their behalf, and then rose again. There is not another one.
True.
And so I have an ankh tattooed on my arm. I went through a phase where I traded salvation on the same journey of trying to find my ethnic truth. And the enemy has done a great job of offering substitutions for the truth on that same journey. But I want to encourage you to challenge God. He said to try him. It says in his word that you can seek and you shall find. Ask him to demonstrate himself to you. He's the only God that has physical evidence for his existence.
Amen. Praise God.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Church.
Amen. We're going to move on to the next topic.
I'm not coming for you, though.
No, absolutely not.
No,
I
that was
love it all.
wonderful.
I love it all.
We're going to go into our history very quickly. Historically, what does slavery mean to mainland Africans? Historically. You don't think they know it? Is that what you said?
I don't think mainland Africans learn about African American history. I don't think they're informed about it, which is why I think they have what they do know about African Americans is what they see in the media. That's their perception of African Americans as opposed to the history. So I think they can say these ill things about African Americans because they don't really know the history.
Yeah. So I think that kind of answers this question, this follow-up. I don't know. Did you have something? No. I think this kind of answers this follow-up question is, do Africans resonate with the plight of African Americans for over 400 years of oppression? Do you think that resonates with them at all? No.
I don't think so. My friend, he's here right now. He's from Ghana. So he told me his dad's story, which is crazy. Losing parents and other stuff, which is just crazy. But then when he got here to America, he just kept pressing it now like they're well off, right? But he was telling me, even his dad was telling me, is like, there's no excuse. As in his brain, he didn't see excuse, but I will understand that because you're coming into a situation that's kind of chaotic, and you don't know why it's chaotic, but you see different ethnic groups going at it, but you still strive going forward, and you're just seeing prosperity. Of course you got hardships and stuff, but you're still prospering. So you're like, why are they not prospering and I'm prospering? And to me, that's when elitism kind of slides in, because you're like, I'm doing it and then you're not. Whenever you get the pointing that finger, that's when that's when it divides. So I think you probably don't, from what I've been told and from what I understand, which is very limited, is I'm stepping into this and it has nothing to do with me. Y'all, that's y'all problem. I don't know why, but then in my head, I'm like, well, if they pull you over, they're not going to ask if you're African.
Yeah.
They don't care about that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
But I guess that's probably if I went back to Africa, or if I went to Africa and I saw hardships and stuff and I wouldn't relate as much, I'm like, I'm not from here. So I don't even, some of the things would just go over my head.
So, but should we? Is that something that we should? What is it? Is it of course, I think it's an education thing, but what's the step to bringing that together?
I would propose two things. One, learning about Pan-Africanism, which is a political ideology that Africa belongs to Africans, and that includes African descendants. And that political ideology is what gave birth to Nigerian independence. It was actually Black Americans that inspired organizing for freedom in Nigeria. So one, learning how we are connected. And then two, what happened after all those people left the continent? What happened? There had to be some sort of depravity. You have millions of people that are just gone from the continent and you don't feel the effects of that. I feel like that side of the story, I don't even know that side of the story, but it has to be there.
Yeah. I think we have an online question.
Yeah, we have two for this segment. The first one is, do African Americans understand that Africans also went through slavery in Africa?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Do they?
I don't. Well, okay. I can't
don't
speak
think
for everybody, but for
Yeah.
me, I can speak on it and be like,
Yeah.
that slavery isn't a westernized concept. It does come from over there, in some kind of way. But I think the way slavery was different from understanding.
Yeah.
It wasn't based on your ethnicity. It wasn't based on the color of your skin. It was probably tribalism or debt. You owe me something, you have to work for it. You're from another tribe, you're our hostages or whatever. But here, America, slavery as a concept is you know, it's bad, period. But when you got here to America, it's like, you're not even human now. Like, you're nothing. So, like, I think I do understand. I think most African Americans probably don't understand, like, that slavery was rooted there first. They probably don't get it. But I think I, like, took the, you know, the liberty to try to, like, understand more, because I know, like, it wasn't just, like, a problem that just birthed out of nowhere.
Yeah. Is there a follow-up question? It's a completely different question? Okay.
All right. Do you think in the future there may be a program or people, where Black Americans in mass will return back to Africa to invest and stay?
That already tried to happen
I know,
with
right?
Marcus Garvey and the creation of Liberia. Liberia was actually created for Black Americans to go back to Africa, to buy land, to have governments, and to go back home. We still here.
Yeah, the government.
But I think there is a group of, I don't know a lot about it, but I think Ghana is doing a lot. Like, a lot of Americans are moving back to Ghana. And I want to say something more. I think I've heard about Ghana even saying, and I think maybe Nigeria, but they're saying, like, if you come, we will help you. Like, we will transition you. We will provide you with money, housing, support to aid in your transition from America to Ghana. So I know that I heard about it. I don't know if you can speak to it.
I'm gonna say, so you ain't tell me that I can go back to Ghana, brother? I can go back home. Even though I may not be Ghanaian, it's gonna be all right. I'm Ghanaian now.
Okay, so I want to speak to or talk about perspectives, because I guess all of this is also perspectives or understanding each other's perspective. Why is it that Africans and African Americans cannot or do not see each other's perspective? Or maybe why do you think, is it that they don't see it, or maybe they don't understand it? What do you guys think?
I think it's hard to understand something if you live the same reality and you got a different outcome. So if you're African American, you're African, you live in America, so you experience the same hardship because you're Black, period. That's all America sees. But if you obtain, like, a certain success and the other person didn't, then you're going to equate it to, well, what did you do wrong? Like, what kind of happened? Because I'm here and I live in a nice house. I have a nice job. Like, I'm educated. Like, they can't take away my education. Like, do you not know that? So I think when that comes into play, that kind of conversation or that kind of language is being used, it's crippling because, like, I don't know how you deal with trauma, and I don't know how you deal with certain things. So I can't just say you failed because of this. It's like, I don't know what happened along the way. Like, I just don't know. So I think, like, understanding, like, people's upbringing or kind of, like, their journey, like, will kind of, like, bring, like, every time I talk to, you know, his father, like, I understand, like, why, like, he's so appreciative of where he's at, because I know your background now.
Yeah.
And obviously him and we talk a lot, and he knows my background, so he may understand, like, dang, like, I didn't even think about it like that.
Yeah.
So now there's an understanding, if that makes any sense, because now I'm literally putting myself in your place to see, what do you see? How did you feel? How would I feel if both of my parents died when I was 12? How would I feel if I had to, like, move over here, not knowing the language and figure it all out? Like, that would be scary. Like, it's super scary. On top of that, they're killing Black folks, and I'm Black. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I think just trying to see it from the perspectives.
As an African, do you think that it's hard, first generation Africans, you know, even second generation, like, do you think it's hard for us to understand that perspective? Like, even today, talking to an older...
The African American perspective?
Yeah, the African American's perspective. Like, talking today with a first generation, they hold all these stereotypes and discrimination things, all of these thoughts, right? And they just don't get what the African American community has gone through up until now, and why some of the things are happening in our country right now with systematic racism and everything, and they just completely disassociate they disconnect, right? And I don't know if I'm just asking this question now. Like, is it something that they're just not willing to accept or understand, or is there something else there? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
I think it's due to a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding, not being informed. I think I used to have that same mindset until I took African American literature. And that completely opened my eyes to the black experience and the black plight in America. When I understood the experience and the black plight of the African American, that's when my mindset around what I thought they were completely changed to the system created this. It's a result of discrimination. It's a result of racism, inequality. That's what created, what's happening right now, right? And so it's a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding. And I think we have to teach each other. We have to continue to learn, open our, be more critical, as opposed to just taking things as face value.
And these titles that we have, like the African American, the black, like, what do you like? I guess I'm asking everybody, are there certain things to like about these terms? Are they good terms? African American, black, like, would you rather be identified as something else rather than, look at me like that. But what is it that you like about these terms? What is it that you like about these terms? It's a question that's here, so I'm asking it.
When I went through my phase, y'all, I used to actually identify with all of it except for American.
Okay.
I took that off. I was like, I'm not American. I was born here, but that has nothing to do with who I am. Mm-hmm. That is what was assigned to me. But now, after, investigating the hybrid in the survival mechanism that carving out African American was, now I have an appreciation for African American, because it doesn't have anything to do with the whiteness that I used to associate it with, but rather it has to do with survival and creativity. Mm-hmm. And I marvel at the Harlem Renaissance. I marvel at the Black Power movement. I marvel at the creation of hip hop and spoken word and everything about us that is deemed cool. Mm. That comes from taking what was left of the Africanisms and making those things survive inside of America. And the concoction of that is what came out. There's no other group of people on this planet that look like us. The kind of slavery that we experienced was different from the slavery in the Caribbean and in South America. The brutality of it looks like nowhere on the planet. So when I say I do identify as black, I identify as being descendant of Africa, and I identify as being African American for that reason, not because of anything else.
At one point, sorry, go ahead. I think I'm gonna derail a little bit, but go ahead. Say what you.
Just to quickly respond. I mean, I consider myself African, although I was born in America. So technically, I'm African American, but I don't. I associate American with white.
Okay.
That's my association, and so I people say, well, where are you born? I'm Houston. Well, you're American. Right. I'm African. So I consider myself African before American. Right.
So at one point, was black a derogatory term? Like,
yeah, at one point it was.
So where did that change come, and why is it now accepted?
The thing is, because we have the diaspora,
right.
You could be black.
Yeah. Right.
I think I'm also black, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But if you want to be specific, I'm African.
Yes.
Black, yeah. So you can be black, but from the Caribbean.
You could be black from Brazil.
You can be black from Brazil, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because of the diaspora, right?
So it's understanding that diaspora. So
right.
Because I've heard people say, well, no, I'm not black. I'm.
Well, because black was also a construct. So I understand what they're saying. Like,
Okay.
White people created
very good.
White, black. They created race.
Very good.
So I can understand that argument as well.
Very good.
We're talking about the difference between race and ethnicity.
Okay.
And people use them interchangeably. They are not. Race is about phenotype. It's about how your genes present, and they put you inside of a category.
Right.
Based on how you present. You can be an albino black person, but you walking around here blonde hair, blue eyes, you're
Right,
not black.
exactly.
Right.
According to race,
Right.
But then ethnicity is I'm Igbo, I'm Yoruba, I'm
Right.
American. You know,
Exactly.
like that is ethnicity.
That's good. Do we have a question from online?
Okay, so you guys kind of talked about this, about why do Africans get angry about Americans embracing their culture? But now it goes further. It says calling it appropriation instead of embracing and educating. It's like the Willie Lynch syndrome that still keeps a race divided when they are more powerful together. And so I'm going to tie that into the question that says, how do you eradicate the division between African Americans and Africans?
I guess let's focus on the how do we eradicate the differences between African and African Americans.
I think we eradicate the differences between Africans and African Americans by doing this, by having conversations, by teaching and discussing and pushing and doing things like this is what we're going to do or what we can do to kind of eradicate the differences.
It's just like teaching your children,
Right.
teaching your household moving forward. Like, this is, how we, conduct ourselves and cooperate. Like, so I was thinking, like, I was trying to explain something to my mother, and she just wasn't understanding, or it's just like, but that's not how it's been or how it was, or that's not what it is, because whatever they saw, they believe as their truth. So I can't really do anything to her mind now. She's like set in her ways, like that's just, she's gonna be what she's gonna be. But like, say like my little cousin or something, I can educate him and be like, read this, look into this. And now I just like, now he's like, okay, now he's not pointing the finger or doing other things. I think it's just the generation moving forward. I think that's how you really just push this thing forward.
I do want to say that, like, when people wear things, that are, they want to embrace, I think if you want to embrace African culture, that's a great thing. If you want to, come and learn Afrobeats dance and come to dance classes and, go to, Afrobeats events and learn the culture, that's awesome, but learn it, right? And so I think doing it and not learning it, not trying to understand it, it's not my responsibility to teach you, like, right? And so that's kind of exhausting to have to teach everybody about who I am, right, all the time, right? So I think it's also taking ownership and taking responsibility and not being a victim. And so if you're gonna wear Isiagu, go and learn what Isiagu is. What is it? What does it mean? Where is it from? What village are you? Like what state? What country? So I think taking ownership and taking responsibility for your own development as a Black or African in the diaspora.
For Black Americans, you can also go to AfricanAncestry.com. It's a little expensive, but it's the largest first of all, it's Black owned. Secondly, it's the largest database of African DNA, and you can do your ancestry and your heritage, and they will actually link you to a tribe in Africa. So you can start there.
All right, so we're gonna go to our last category, which is community influence. This is what I'm gonna ask. Fraternities, sororities, the Greek life, right? Does that encourage both sides to see past their differences? I don't know if anybody here is part of an organization or anything like that, or have seen or have friends or whatever the case may be. Does that encourage both sides, African American, does it encourage them to see past their differences? Everybody looked at Peter.
Are you Greek? Are you Greek?
No,
oh, okay. Nobody else here is Greek?
You're the only one with the mic up. I was ready to listen to what you were about to say.
I am a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and so I wouldn't say that there is an intentional part of our mission or bylaws or whatever it is that says Africans and African Americans. That's not a part of. I don't think that's a part of the system. But I mean, clearly I'm a part of it. So I mean, there is an appreciation for all black people, black men. You know, all men who want to be involved. I think there is an appreciation for all men, but I don't think there's an intentional thing within our system that says, you know, let's bring Africans and African Americans together. Let's close that gap.
Should there be? Should there be something like that? Or do they recognize that there is one, first of all? Do they recognize that there are differences? And if there is, or if they do, is there something that can be done to look past that or to embrace that, to bring them together?
I don't want to speak for Kappa. I think that...
Or what do you think? What, like, personally, what do you think? You're not speaking on behalf of the organization, but just, you know, personal. Like, what do you think could or should happen?
Yeah, I mean, we're all about, you know, men and ensuring that men are uplifted, that we achieve. And so I think that it is something that we should care about, something that is important for us to do. So I believe in it. We have the Guide Right program that is all about the Kappa League, right? That's all about supporting, educating, teaching young black men. And there is no differentiation between black and African, but we're all about black men and boys in low-income environments that need support. So I think we have programs that are created for the development of men. And we don't differentiate between African, African American, white, black. We want to support men.
That's good. That's good. What does, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to just kind of throw them out. We're still receiving questions from online, but what part does education play? I know we touched on it, like, I believe in every category that we've hit, we touched on it a little bit. But what part does education play in all of this, and even just bringing us and reconciling, understanding each other, perspective, all of that? What part does it play, if any?
It's the part. It's all of it. With the current events that are going on in the world right now, I think, especially in this country, I think one of the greatest things to come out of it is like awareness, education. It could be a fad all it wants to be, but you've seen it and you can't unsee it, you know? So like just learning just about like how like oppression worked, how it works, and then like understanding like your parents probably did all the best that they could given the situation that they were given, and they're passing down to you their best, and it might not be the greatest. So you do have to like go in and figure out like, you know, where do I come from? Who am I in this country? Like, is the media really right on what they paint about me? Or like, is it not? Like the fact that I didn't know who Marcus Garvey was when I was in high school that's sad. That I only know about Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, and Rosa Parks and segregation. Like, you don't even tell me about Emmett Till, that he kicked it off. Like, you don't tell me about the Scottsboro Boys. You don't tell me about that. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think like education, because then you begin to appreciate who you are and where you come from. And so like going back to the question earlier, like before I would stray away from the whole American thing. I mean, I am American, but I'll be like, man, I'm from New Orleans. Like, that's where I'm from. Like, it's its own city's own culture and its own. That's where I'm from. But now, like, I'm proud of that because I'm like, you know what we did here? Like, do you know what we did here? Like, do you really know what we did here? Oh, yeah, you did this and that. No. Do you know what we did here? Yeah, what you have on, if it's cotton on it, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think education is just huge. It's so much bigger. Just the conversations I've been having with people, they're different now. It's not just about, oh, everything's a race thing. Like, even when you're having conversations with people that aren't of color, that aren't black, and like having a conversation with them and realizing that on both sides we both are uneducated, and if we both get educated, I wonder how that conversation will go.
Well, okay, so even with the education, like, do you think there's some changes that are happening in our nation now? Small changes, but they're happening. Do you believe that this will be somehow find its way into our education system? Yes, no, maybe.
So long as black people are teachers.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep pushing. So I know that a lot of, a lot of our history books have inaccurate information or not enough information about black history. And I think there's a large push to start including that information and start telling the truth. And so I know the curriculum writers are I saw like a news segment about curriculum writers being pushed on changing the curriculum, updating the curriculum, telling the truth in the curriculum, talking more about black history. So I think there is a big push for it, and I wouldn't be surprised in the next 10 years if we continue to agitate and push the system to change. I believe that it can change.
So to follow up that to follow up that response, what steps should we take to start the reconciliation process within the African and African American community? What steps? I know, I think Peter said this earlier, this is a step, no matter how small it is, this is a step towards, something. But what other things can we do? What are some other things you think?
We can put our fists down.
We can what? Put our foots down.
Our fists.
Fists.
Put our fists
Okay,
down.
Okay.
And try humility. It's not about us. All right, and when I say us, I mean me, as individuals. It's not about me. How can I understand you? But also, it's okay to identify as a people group, as a global community. It's okay. We are different. We are in different parts of the world. We are a part of a global community. It is okay. We may be different. You look like me. I look like you. That makes us family.
I think that it all starts in the house. Parents need to start educating their children right from wrong. This is your brother, this is your sister. You guys are not divided. You guys are the same. Embrace them, understand them, listen to them, share your own experiences. I feel like if it's not starting at home and you're outside looking for answers to your questions, or if you're even looking for answers to your questions, it can only go so far. So if the parents do their parts at home, it'll make a difference in the world.
Okay, so do you have any books or films that you can recommend to both African Americans and African Americans? Did I say that twice? Africans and African Americans to watch to better learn about each other. For sure.
I feel like everybody needs to watch Roots. I said
You
it
said that
earlier.
like 4 times.
I always say it because a lot of people don't know. They don't know the history.
Yeah.
So I feel
It's
like
true.
that's like the prime example. Like that, if you watch that movie, it's long, but if you watch it, you would understand yourself and why things are the way they are today.
True.
Thank you.
I know all about
Anybody?
Roots, for sure. I mean, if you're ready to get into that, go ahead.
6 parts.
Just like my brother said, if you're going to do it, do it.
Like Nike.
Learn about it.
So they've given us, what about, so what do you think?
A book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. Start there.
I'm gonna give you like a film. I'm a huge docuseries kind of dude. I just like that stuff. Henry Louis Gates, he has African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross. I think if you start there, it's really, really good. It's about 6 episodes in an hour. Knock out one a day. If you could binge watch a Netflix show, you could definitely do that. 13th, Ava DuVernay did a great job of articulating and depicting Jim Crow, mass incarceration, all of that. So you can understand that. I would say start there. I mean, I can go on, but I don't want to, overwhelm you. But I'll say start there.
And another thing that I would say, reading these books and watching these films and documentaries, you would also see that the Africans that were brought over to America on a slave ship, they were punished. They were brutally punished for speaking their languages and trying to keep up with their cultures and traditions. Their tongues were cut out of their mouths for reading. Their foots were cut off. Like, all kind of horrible things happened to them, when they tried to carry on the things they did back home to America. So the people like the Black Americans here that don't know who they are, where they come from, their languages, it goes all the way back, you know, during Black history, slavery. Like, they were not allowed to speak their languages. You have to speak, like he said, you got to speak English. So that's one of the main reasons why, and it carried on generation after generation.
Also, come to Jesus.
The Bible.
He's great.
Amen.
Okay. I think we have a question from online. Yeah.
I have two questions. Okay, the first one is, what do blacks mean when they say they created the opportunity for Africans to come and succeed? And, well, I guess you want to answer that first.
Well, I was having this argument with another Nigerian that was born in Nigeria that said, you know, that kind of reinforced the message that we've been saying, the stereotypes, like, you know, blacks, I don't understand blacks. They're lazy. They don't want to work hard. But me, I came from Africa with nothing, and now I'm a doctor. So it's true. They don't want to achieve. They don't want to advance themselves. And so, wait, sorry, what was the question again?
What do African Americans mean when they say that they created the opportunity for Africans to come and succeed?
So yeah, so my response to my peer that said I came from Nigeria with nothing and I made it was the reason why you're able to come from Nigeria to America to go to school, you got a scholarship, you can get an education, is because African Americans died and fought so that you can come here and do that. Without the fight, without civil rights, the movement, without the protests, without the boycotts, without being raped, without being the cotton picking, the discrimination, like all that stuff made it so that I can now come here and go to school and achieve. And, you know, and so like without that fight, we wouldn't be able to do that. And that was my push to that person. And to all Africans that say, you know, we made it, why can't they? You know? The reason why we were able to make it is because they made it possible.
Yeah, you can read the next one.
All right, the next question is, how are Africans involved in the political spectrum of America?
Well, you're not the person that wrote it, but if you listening, do you mind getting in the chat or wherever you wrote that and just kind of specify your question a little bit?
Maybe
like,
we can assume, like, read it one more time. Maybe we can make something out of it.
How are Africans involved in the political spectrum of America?
Okay.
So yeah, like in American politics,
Yeah.
like as far as like voting and the laws and legislations used to, like, for example, if we want, you know, our children to learn more about African American history, then we have to, everyone pushes for that, not just African Americans, but Africans as well. That's what I'm assuming that they're speaking to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real question. Are Africans even interested in political offices and things like that? Okay.
I have several friends who are African who've run for office in America. So I think it happens. I mean, but I don't know. I can't really answer that question. I'm not informed enough.
We're not informed enough, I guess, right?
I think that may depend on geography a little bit, or that could be a factor. Because I know that there were a few African people that were on the ballot last cycle, and I know that there are African people organizing now concerning, you know, getting people registered to vote. We work with a few Pan-African organizations here in Houston. So, I mean, if there are African populations in cities, yeah.
I think we have one more question.
Yes, one more question. So with the statement that Jamal had made about how black people are not lazy but tired and traumatized. So you have movies like Black Wall Street, Rosewood that are perfect examples of smart, hardworking political, wealthy black people who built things that were torn down. So how can Africans educate themselves on this, and how can they help in the advancement of black people in America?
That's a good question. I mean, it's a legitimate question. If you could please come back and reiterate that question, but it's a
So pretty much what they're saying is we have examples of black
Yeah.
people being successful.
yes.
So how can we use those examples? Sorry. So how can read the question again? Sorry.
Okay. So you have movies like Black Wall Street and Rosewood that are perfect examples of smart, hardworking political figures that made it or built something and white people tore it down. So how can Africans educate themselves on this, and how can they help in the advancement of black people in America?
Watch the movies, for one.
Yeah.
But if you don't know the movies exist, though,
Yeah.
I think what we can do as
Gotcha.
Africans is when we hear these negative comments about African Americans, it's our responsibility to push and have these conversations. So when my mate was like, they're lazy, I came here with nothing, and I'm a doctor. Why can't they do it? That's me. I had to say, yo, the reason why you're able to become a doctor and go to school is because they made a way, right? And the reason why a lot of them can't make it is because they're in neighborhoods that zoning, right? Again, inequality and racism. And so it's our responsibility as Africans who are informed and more knowledgeable. It's our responsibility to push back and to push our peers and our families to think more critically about society and why things are the way they are for blacks. It's not because they just don't want to succeed. It's because society has really made it hard for them to do so.
And reinvest.
I was just about to say that.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
You got it.
No, but once you do achieve these accolades and once you do make the money, reinvest it into black neighborhoods, reinvest it into black pockets. Side note, I was introduced to a susu. If y'all want to talk to me about what that is later, I would like that a lot. Thank you.
That's a money circle? Where that's at? Where you find that at? No?
Hey, well, that's behind the camera stuff. You know,
Okay.
about that,
Oh.
behind
I
the
didn't know what that
scenes.
means. I'm
So
clueless.
This is a slight switch. It says, can you elaborate on the Africans that were slave owners and wealthy during the time of slavery in America?
I heard about it, but I don't have too much information on it.
So the way that works, from what I have learned, is that black people that were instrumental in the trading of other black people did get a profit from that. But as far as being slave owners here in this country, I have not read anything about that. But what did happen is black people were allowed to run slaves, which means that they had positions of power over slaves. They were able to earn money from slave labor, but not necessarily own, like African people owning slaves here.
All right. Well, that wraps up our questioning for tonight. So what I want to throw to you guys as we wrap up, what are your lasting, encouraging, reconciliation geared statements to everybody out there, everybody watching, first generation Africans, African Americans? You know, what are your lasting statements?
I feel like we should be more open-minded. A lot of people are very closed-minded. I think you should go out there, attend different events, attend different groups, and just get to know them better and understand them. If you just stay in one place, oh, I don't want to go here because I don't know how it's going to be, or no, just go and see how it is for what it is, and you'll know for yourself rather than letting somebody else tell you. Yeah.
I would say, there's a few things I would say. First thing, I think economic empowerment is something that we should be striving towards. Because I feel like once you have that leverage, it's kind of hard to deny. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if all the enslaved people decided to stop picking cotton, the South would have went broke, and they would have did something about it. So it's the same way. I think if you are invested into black communities and black-owned businesses to the point where, because the reality is, black people in general in America, we accumulate a lot of revenue for this country, a lot of revenue for this country. And my thing is, like, if you look at it, like, what are we doing with it? I think we could be building. I think a lot of people need to start thinking that way. Like, how can we build? How can we build? Like, I'm thinking about that now. Like, my father, like, for my father and my mother, like, I see their lives and I know what they went through. So I'm like, okay, how can I build for y'all? Because y'all do need something, and how can I build for the future? Another thing, I think, if you can go to work for 8 hours and then on top of that go to school, and you can do all these things for, work so you can get money, and you're working probably for somebody else, going to somebody else's school so you can learn so you can get money. I think along the way you should go ahead and educate yourself about your history as a black person, period, whether it's from Africa or not. Because if you're here in America, believe it or not, the same issues that African Americans go through, you are now, like, welcome to the party. Like, there's no discrimination there. Like, it got to be us together, or it's going to be everyone against us. So I think we should come together collectively as people. Business ideas. Like, I know a lot of people aren't educated in the business world. Get educated. Buy a lot. Buy a property. Like, do something. Start a business. I think it starts there. I really do.
That's good. Peter?
Yep. I think before, my people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Good.
So I think going back to what you said, I would encourage blacks, all blacks, Africans, African Americans, everybody, just know your history. Like you said, just reinforcing what you said. Seek the truth. And before we build, because I believe the next step is to build, but before we build together, we have to know oneself. So figure out who you are, learn who you are, and then after that, we're going to be empowered to now support one another because we know who we are, where we come from. So, but I agree with everything you said around, like, knowing oneself, and then in the next, building, investing in our own community, building our own community. But we can't do that until we know ourselves.
That's good.
I would say we all need to take a humble pill. No human being is perfect. No culture is perfect. No people group is perfect. There was only one perfect human being on this earth. And so if we are able to take off, I need to be right, you are wrong, and we listen with our heart, I don't see why reconciliation is impossible. Anytime that you have rebellion or dissension, pride is at the center of it.
Yeah.
So.
That's good. The aim of all of this is reconciliation. That's all it is. And like we said in our last panel, just to close it off, like we said in our last panel when we close it off, reconciliation is two-sided. It takes two sides. Forgiveness, you can say, yeah, I forgive you. Forgiveness is only one-sided. You can hurt me, I forgive you, and I can go about my life, But for us to reconcile, it has to take both of us to do it. When we were reconciled back to Christ, Jesus died on the cross. He provided us salvation and forgiveness. It's there, but we have to accept that. We have to decide that we want this thing to be reconciled to Christ, right? So in order for us to reconcile within the black community, before we can go outside our community to reconcile with the nation or any other thing or any other race, we must first, on both sides, be willing to come together. Be willing to say, okay, we're brothers and sisters. Hey, what's our next step? Wherever prejudice or stereotypes or whatever, we're breaking all of those things. We're coming together as one, because Scripture says, how can two can't work together unless they agree? Unless you agree. In order for us to go anywhere as a black community, African, Black Americans, for us to do anything as a community, we have to agree. We have to agree. So for us to be reconciled, the African American community and the African community have to both decide that this is what we want. Because if it's one side, there cannot be any type of reconciliation. Nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. But we're gonna close out. So to really seal this thing up, this is our third iteration. This is our third panel. To close off the panel, we're going to have a panel of pastors, come together and just wrap this thing up, right? What can the church add to this? What can us as believers add to this? What can we do in this community as the church? Where do we stand, and what can we do to bring this reconciliation? So I invite you to stay tuned for our next discussion, our last panel that will be coming up soon. We will introduce it, or we will be putting this out. So stay tuned, look for it. We will be live this Friday as well for GZ Ministry. So tune in at 7:30. We'll be live with a great word for you. I thank you guys. Our panel, one more time, thank you for coming out. Thank you for your insight. We really appreciate you guys. God bless you. We really believe that the Lord is doing a great thing in this nation, even though it looks chaotic, it looks weird. But we believe that change is coming, and these are the first steps towards that change and reconciliation. So we thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. God bless you.